They say money talks, but true power whispers. At Teterboro Airport on a rainy Tuesday, a man in a $5,000 custom suit looked at a woman in a hoodie and saw nothing but an obstacle. He didn't see the CEO. He didn't see the owner of the jet. All he saw was a seat he wanted and a black woman he thought he could bully. He forced her to move. He sat in her spot. He smirked as he buckled his belt. But he forgot one thing. You don't kick the captain off the ship. Watch what happens when a billionaire's patience runs out. The jet stops dead on the runway, and karma delivers a knockout punch that cost this man his career, his reputation, and his freedom. This is the story of Porter Walsh and the day he messed with the wrong woman. The rain at Teterboro Airport didn't fall. It hammered. It was a relentless, cold October sheet that turned the tarmac into a slick, reflective mirror of grey and steel. For Jocelyn Banks, the sound of the rain against the roof of the black SUV was the first moment of silence she had experienced in 72 hours. Jocelyn sat in the back of the Escalade, her head resting against the cool glass. She didn't look like the cover of Forbes. She didn't look like the woman who had just closed the fiercest logistics merger in the last decade of Silicon Valley history. She looked like a shadow. She wore a charcoal, oversized hoodie from a university she hadn't attended in 20 years, black leggings that had seen better days, and a pair of worn-out sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a messy, no-nonsense bun, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the deep exhaustion etched under her eyes. "We're at the FBO Ms. Banks." The driver, a large, silent man named Kevin, said softly. "Thanks, Kevin," Jocelyn murmured, her voice raspy. "Just the backpack today." She grabbed the battered leather bag at her feet. It was a Hermes HAC 40 apiece that cost more than most cars, but Jocelyn had used it so aggressively over the last 5 years that the leather was scuffed and softened to the point where it looked like a thrift store find to the untrained eye. That was the point. Jocelyn Banks, CEO of Meridian Dynamics, had spent her entire life being watched. When she traveled, she preferred to be invisible. She stepped out into the biting wind. The fixed-base operator FBO terminal at Teterboro was bustling with the specific kind of quiet chaos that accompanies the ultra-wealthy. Men in Loro Piana coats paced while shouting into phones. Women with surgical enhancements and Louis Vuitton luggage sets waited on plush leather sofas. Jocelyn bypassed them all. She wasn't flying commercial, and she wasn't flying typical charter. She was flying on the Osprey. The Osprey was a Gulfstream G950ER, a $65 million masterpiece of engineering capable of flying near the speed of sound. It was managed by a private aviation firm, but the asset itself was held by a blind trust, a trust that Jocelyn controlled. She walked onto the tarmac, the wind whipping her hoodie strings. She kept her head down. She just wanted to get to San Francisco. She wanted a glass of scotch, a blanket, and 10 hours of sleep before she had to face the board of directors on Monday. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the flight attendant greeted her at the stairs. It was Lydia, a woman Jocelyn had flown with a dozen times. Lydia knew the drill. No fanfare, no Ms. Banks. Just quiet. "Hey, Lydia," Jocelyn said, climbing the stairs. "Rough weather. Captain O'Malley says we'll punch through the chop in about 10 minutes, then it's smooth sailing to SFO," Lydia said, with a warm, professional smile. "I have the Glenfiddich 30 poured. You're a lifesaver." The cabin of the G950ER was configured for maximum comfort. Cream leather seats, mahogany inlays, and gold fixtures that were tasteful, not gaudy. Jocelyn walked to seat 1A, the forward-most single seat on the left. It was her spot. It offered the most privacy and the best view of the cockpit door. She dropped her heavy bag onto the floor, kicked off her sneakers, and curled her legs up onto the seat, pulling the hoodie tight around her knees. She took the crystal glass Lydia offered, took a sip of the burning amber liquid, and closed her eyes. For a moment, there was peace. But this wasn't a solo flight. Meridian Dynamics had a policy of offsetting costs by leasing out empty seats on corporate shuttles to vetted partners. Today, 3 other seats were sold. Jocelyn didn't care who they were, as long as they were quiet. She was drifting into a light doze when the peace was shattered. "I don't care what the contract says. Make the damn numbers work, Jerry. I'm not paying you to tell me it's illegal. I'm paying you to find the loophole." The voice was loud, booming and dripping with that specific frequency of entitlement that made Jocelyn's teeth ache. She opened one eye. Coming up the stairs was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that built Wall Street villains. He was tall, thick-set, with slicked-back blonde hair that was fighting a losing battle against a receding hairline. He wore a navy pinstripe suit that was tailored a little too tight, a gold Rolex Submariner that flashed aggressively, and he was shouting into an iPhone 15 Pro Max. This was Porter Walsh. Jocelyn didn't know him, but she knew his type. He was the kind of man who thought the volume of his voice correlated to the size of his intellect. Behind him trailed a woman who looked exhausted. She was beautiful, dressed in Chanel from head to toe, but her eyes were empty. She carried a small dog in a designer carrier. "No, I'm boarding now," Porter barked into the phone, stepping into the cabin and bringing the smell of expensive cologne and damp wool with him. "I'll call you from the air. Just get it done." He hung up and looked around the cabin with a sneer, assessing the luxury as if checking for dust. His eyes scanned the empty seats, then landed on Jocelyn in seat 1A. He didn't see the CEO of Meridian Dynamics. He saw a black woman in a hoodie, curled up with a drink, looking like she'd just come from a shift at a warehouse. Porter stopped. He frowned. He looked at his boarding pass, then back at Jocelyn. He didn't check the seat number. He just checked his own bias. "Excuse me," Porter said. He didn't say it politely. He said it the way one speaks to a servant who has forgotten the salt. Jocelyn opened both eyes. She didn't move. She didn't smile. She just looked at him. "Yes," she said, her voice calm. "You're in my spot," Porter stated, gesturing with his phone. Jocelyn glanced at the empty cabin. There were 12 seats. "There are plenty of seats, sir, and I believe 1A is assigned to me." Porter laughed. It was a dry, humorless bark. "Assigned look, sweetheart? I don't know who put you up here. Maybe the cleaning crew is allowed a break before takeoff, but I booked the priority bulkhead. I need the legroom for business." Lydia, the flight attendant, was in the galley preparing the welcome tray. She hadn't heard the exchange yet. "I'm comfortable here," Jocelyn said, taking another sip of her scotch, "and I'm not moving." Porter's face went a shade of red that matched the stripes in his tie. He wasn't used to being told no, especially not by women who looked like Jocelyn. "I don't think you understand," Porter said, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "I paid $12,000 for this seat. I'm a platinum partner with the brokerage. Now grab your little bag and move to the back where you belong, or I'll have you thrown off this plane before the engines even start." The air in the cabin shifted. It went from a luxury transport to a cage match. Jocelyn felt that familiar heat rise in her chest, not fear, but the slow-burning furnace of a warrior preparing for battle. She set the glass down. "You really don't want to do this," Jocelyn said softly. "Oh, I really do," Porter sneered. The silence that stretched between them was heavy, broken only by the hum of the auxiliary power unit APU spooling up outside. The rain lashed against the oval windows, distorting the world outside, making the cabin feel like an isolated capsule, where normal social rules were suspended in favor of raw hierarchy. Porter Walsh stood over Jocelyn, his posture wide, dominating the aisle. He was waiting for her to flinch. He was waiting for the apology, the scramble, the subservience he felt he was owed by birthright and bank account. Jocelyn didn't flinch. She studied him. In her mind, she was doing what she did in boardrooms, a risk assessment. Subject male, mid-40s, aggressive, narcissistic traits. Likely middle management or junior partner at a high-volume firm, real power, doesn't need to shout. Value of conflict low, value of peace high. She could end this right now. She could pull out her phone, dial the tail number manager, and have security drag him off the tarmac. But that would take 20 minutes. It would involve paperwork. It would delay the flight. She had to be in San Francisco for a 7:00 a.m. briefing on the merger. "Is there a problem here?" Lydia appeared from the galley. Her professional smile was tight. She had sensed the tension immediately. She looked from Porter's red face to Jocelyn's calm demeanor. Lydia knew exactly who Jocelyn was. She opened her mouth to speak, to address Jocelyn as Ms. Banks, but Jocelyn caught her eye. It was a micro-gesture, a slight shake of the head. "Don't." Jocelyn didn't want the scene. She didn't want the "do you know who I am" speech. It was tacky, and frankly, she was too tired to explain her existence to a man who wouldn't believe it anyway. "Yes, there is a problem." Porter spun around to face Lydia, pointing a thick finger at Jocelyn. "I booked 1A. This passenger is refusing to vacate the premium seat. I have work to do. I need the table space. Move her." Lydia blinked. She looked at the manifest in her hand. "Sir, the seating on this charter is open, but—" "But nothing," Porter snapped. "I'm the managing director at Helios Capital. I generated $40 million in revenue last quarter. I'm not sitting in the back near the engine noise. I want this seat." He turned back to Jocelyn. "And I don't know how you got on here, employee discount, lottery winner, whatever, but you're disrupting paying customers." His wife, the woman with the dog, had taken seat 2A right behind Jocelyn. She looked mortified, but she didn't say a word. She buried her face in a magazine, complicit in her silence. Jocelyn looked at Porter. She saw the veins bulging in his neck. She realized that for a man like this wasn't about a seat. It was about dominance. If she stayed, he would spend the next 6 hours making her life hell. He would kick the back of the seat. He would talk loudly on the phone. He would harass her. Peace was the priority. Jocelyn sighed, a long, weary exhale. "Fine," Jocelyn said. She stood up. Porter's face broke into a smug, victorious grin. It was the look of a schoolyard bully who had just stolen the lunch money. "Smart choice," he muttered. Jocelyn grabbed her battered Hermes bag. She picked up her sneakers. She didn't look at Porter. She looked through him. "Lydia," Jocelyn said quietly, "I'll take the rear divan. It's fine." "But, Mom!" Lydia stuttered, her eyes wide. She was horrified. She knew that Jocelyn was the reason this plane was even in the air. "It's fine, Lydia," Jocelyn repeated, her voice firm. "Let's just get wheels up. I want to sleep." Jocelyn walked past Porter. He didn't move out of the way. She had to turn her shoulder to squeeze past his bulk. As she passed, he leaned in his voice, dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was meant to be insulting. "Next time fly commercial if you can't handle the hierarchy, sweetheart." Jocelyn didn't respond. She walked to the very back of the plane, near the lavatory and the baggage hold access. There was a 3-seat divan there. It was comfortable, but it was the least desirable spot on the plane due to the engine hum. She sat down, tossing her bag on the floor. She watched as Porter settled into seat 1A, her seat. He made a show of wiping down the armrests with a wet wipe, looking at the spot where Jocelyn had been sitting with exaggerated disgust. He snapped his fingers at Lydia. "Stewardess, another drink? Vodka tonic? And take this glass away." He gestured to Jocelyn's unfinished scotch. "It's cluttering my workspace." Lydia walked to the back, her face pale. She crouched down next to Jocelyn. "Ms. Banks." Lydia whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Please, let me call the captain. We can have him removed. This is unacceptable. He has no idea." "Lydia." Jocelyn put a hand on the young woman's arm. "I am tired. I have a headache that feels like a drill bit. If we stop to kick him off, we miss our slot. We sit on the tarmac for another hour. I just want to go home." "But he's awful," Lydia hissed. "He's a rounding error," Jocelyn said, closing her eyes and leaning her head back against the bulkhead. "He's a variable I'm choosing to ignore. Let him have the seat. It's just a chair. Pour him his drink. Let's go." Lydia hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You have the patience of a saint, Ms. Banks." "No," Jocelyn murmured, as the engines began to whine, the pitch rising to a scream. "I have the patience of a predator who knows she's already won. I just don't feel like eating yet." The Giawawaosha taxied out. The rain smeared across the windows. Up in 1A, Porter Walsh was laughing loudly on his phone again. "Yeah, I handled it. Just had to assert a little authority. You know how it is. Some people just need to be reminded of their place." Jocelyn put in her noise-cancelling earbuds. She played a white noise track. She pulled her hood over her eyes. The plane turned onto the active runway. The pilot pushed the throttles forward. The force of the acceleration pressed Jocelyn into the divan. They were hurtling down the runway, the lights blurring the speed building. V1, rotate. The jet lifted off the ground, tearing through the storm clouds, banking sharp to the west. For 2 hours the flight was uneventful. Porter drank 3 vodkas. He harassed Lydia about the temperature of the nuts. He complained about the Wi-Fi speed. He was the king of his little metal castle. Jocelyn slept, or she tried to. Around hour 3, over the plains of Nebraska, Porter decided he was bored. He stood up, stretching, and looked toward the back of the plane. He saw the figure in the hoodie sleeping on the divan. He walked down the aisle. He wasn't going to the bathroom. He was going to the back. Lydia was in the galley. "Sir, can I help you?" "Just stretching my legs," Porter said, pushing past her. He stopped in front of Jocelyn. He looked at her sleeping form. He saw the bag on the floor, the Hermes HAC 40. Porter knew brands. He knew what a new Birkin looked like. He looked at the scuffs, the worn handles, the softness of the structure. To him, it looked fake. It looked like a Chinatown knockoff. He nudged Jocelyn's foot with his shoe. Jocelyn woke instantly. Her eyes snapped open. She pulled an earbud out. "What?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You're blocking the baggage access," Porter lied. "I need to get my coat." "Your coat is in the closet up front," Jocelyn said. "I saw Lydia hang it up." Porter smirked. "I think I left my wallet in it, and I think it's in the hold." "It's not," Jocelyn said. "Are you calling me a liar?" Porter raised his voice. "You know you've got a real attitude problem. I tried to be nice, letting you stay on the flight." Jocelyn sat up. The air in the back of the plane was suddenly very thin. "You let me," Jocelyn repeated. "Yeah, I could have had you booted. You should be grateful." He looked down at her bag. "Nice knockoff, by the way. My wife has a real one. You can tell by the stitching. Yours is sad." He kicked the bag. Hard. It slid across the floor, hitting the bathroom door with a thud. Something inside Jocelyn Banks broke. not her spirit, not her patience, but her resolve to remain anonymous. That bag had been a gift from her father before he died. The scuffs were from trips they took together. Jocelyn looked at the bag. Then she looked at Porter. She stood up. She was 5'9", but in that moment she seemed to fill the entire fuselage. She took off her hoodie, revealing a simple black t-shirt underneath. On her wrist was a Patek Philippe Nautilus rose gold. It was subtle, but to anyone who knew it was worth more than Porter's house. Porter's eyes caught the watch. He frowned. The gears in his head ground together, trying to reconcile the hoodie with the watch. "Sit down," Jocelyn said. Her voice wasn't loud. It was subterranean. "Excuse me," Porter blustered. "I said sit down. Go back to your seat. Do not speak to me again. Do not look at me again." "Or what?" Porter laughed, though it sounded nervous now. "You'll tell on me I know the owners of this charter company. I know the people who signed the checks." Jocelyn stared at him. A slow, terrifying smile spread across her face. "You know the people who signed the checks?" she asked softly. "Damn right I do. Meridian Dynamics. I know the VP of sales." "Good," Jocelyn said. "That will make this easier." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She didn't unlock it. She just pressed a button on the side 3 times. It wasn't a call. It was a signal. Up in the cockpit, a small blue light flashed on the dashboard in front of Captain O'Malley. It was the owner priority request signal. It meant, "Come to the cabin. Now." Captain O'Malley, a former Navy fighter pilot with 20 years of experience, looked at his co-pilot. "You have the comm." "I have the comm," the co-pilot said. O'Malley unbuckled. He put on his hat. He opened the cockpit door and walked into the cabin. Porter saw the pilot and grinned. "Finally. Captain?" "This woman is harassing me. She's threatening me. I want her restrained." Captain O'Malley ignored Porter entirely. He walked past him as if he were a ghost. He walked straight to Jocelyn. He stopped in front of her. He stood at attention. "Ms. Banks." The captain said, his voice respectful and clear. "We received the signal. Is everything all right?" Porter froze. His mouth hung open. He looked from the captain to the woman in the leggings. Ms. Banks Jocelyn looked at the captain. Then she looked at Porter. "Captain," Jocelyn said calmly, "I'd like to divert." "Divert, ma'am?" "Yes." Jocelyn said, her eyes locking on to Porter's terrified face. "I don't feel safe with this passenger on board. He's aggressive, he's intoxicated, and he just physically assaulted my property." "Hey," Porter shouted, I just moved it." "Where would you like to divert to Ms. Banks?" the captain asked, pulling out his tablet. "We are currently over Colorado. Denver is 20 minutes away." "No," Jocelyn said. "I don't want to go to Denver. I want to go back." Back to Teterboro," Jocelyn said. "Take us back to New York." Porter's face went white. "You can't do that. I have a meeting in San Francisco. You can't turn a plane around. It costs thousands of dollars." Jocelyn stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Porter. "Mr. Walsh," she said, her voice like ice. "It costs roughly $12,000 an hour to operate this aircraft. To turn around, fly back, and land will cost approximately $50,000 in fuel and fees." She paused. "I have that in my checking account. Do you—" She turned to the captain. "Turn the bird around, O'Malley. We're dropping off the trash." The physical sensation of a Gulfstream G650ER changing course at 45,000 feet is usually subtle, a gentle bank, a slight shift in the horizon. But Captain O'Malley didn't make this turn subtle. He disengaged the autopilot and banked the aircraft hard to the left. The G-force pressed Porter Walsh into the cabin floor, his knees buckling slightly, as the horizon in the windows tilted violently. "We are turning," Captain O'Malley announced over the PA system, his voice devoid of warmth. "Returning to Ketebe. Estimated time of arrival, 3 hours and 40 minutes. Porter scrambled up from the aisle, gripping the headrest of seat 2A to steady himself. His face was a mask of disbelief that was rapidly crumbling into panic. "You're insane!" Porter shouted, spit flying from his lips. He looked at Jocelyn, who was calmly fastening her watch back onto her wrist. "You're actually doing it. You're turning around. Do you have any idea what this does to my schedule? I have a pitch meeting with the Silicon Valley Venture Group at 9:00 a.m. If I miss that, I lose the portfolio." Jocelyn didn't look at him. She looked at Lydia. "Lydia, is seat 1A available now?" Jocelyn asked. Lydia, who looked like she was witnessing a divine intervention, nodded vigorously. "Yes, Miss Banks, it is." "Good," Jocelyn said. "I'll take it. Mr. Walsh can have the divan in the back. Since he's so concerned with hierarchy, he can sit in the seat designated for non-priority passengers." "I am not sitting in the back," Porter roared. He reached for his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the charter company. I'm getting you blacklisted from every airport in North America." He tapped furiously on his screen. Then he tapped again. He frowned. He looked at the Wi-Fi signal bars. They were grayed out. "Why is the Wi-Fi down?" Porter demanded. Jocelyn settled into seat 1A, the seat Porter had bullied her out of hours ago. She stretched her legs out, enjoying the ample space. She pressed the button to recline the chair. "It's my plane, Porter," Jocelyn said, her voice smooth as velvet. "I own the router. I own the satellite uplink, and I just turned it off." Porter stared at his phone, a useless brick of glass and titanium. You own the plane." "Meridian Dynamics owns the plane," Jocelyn corrected him, opening her laptop. "I own Meridian Dynamics, which means technically you are currently trespassing in my living room." She typed a quick command on her keyboard, then looked up at him. "And you're disturbing the peace. Go to the back, sit on the divan, and buckle up. If you say another word to me or to Lydia, I will have the captain depressurize the cabin to 10,000 feet and fly the rest of the way at a turbulence-heavy altitude. Do not test me." Porter looked at his wife in seat 2A. She was shrinking into herself, clutching her dog, refusing to meet his eyes. "Honey," Porter said, his voice cracking, Tell her who I am." His wife, a woman named Catherine, who had spent 10 years smiling through his tantrums, finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Go to the back, Porter," Catherine whispered. "You've done enough." Porter looked around the cabin. He was alone. The pilot was against him. The flight attendant hated him. His wife was ashamed of him. And the woman in the hoodie, the woman he had treated like garbage, held the keys to the sky. He walked to the back. The walk of shame down the 40-foot cabin felt like a mile. He sat on the divan near the bathroom, exactly where Jocelyn had been. The engine noise was louder back there. The vibration was stronger. For 3.5 hours the cabin was silent. Jocelyn worked on her merger documents. She drank sparkling water. She ate the warm nuts that Lydia brought her. She didn't look back once. In the rear, Porter stewed. He drank 2 more miniature bottles of vodka he found in the galley drawer before Lydia slapped his hand away. He paced. He sweated. He checked his watch every 30 seconds. He calculated the time. If they landed at Teterboro at 6:00 p.m. Eastern, he would miss the last commercial flight out to SFO. He would miss the meeting. "It's okay," he told himself. "I'll fix it on the ground. I'll sue her for unlawful imprisonment. I'll spin this. I'm Porter Walsh. I always win." But as the plane began its descent, banking over the Hudson River, the lights of New York City twinkling in the twilight, Porter felt a knot of dread in his stomach. The plane wasn't taxiing to the normal VIP drop-off point. It was taxiing to a remote stand, and through the rain-streaked window, Porter saw something that made his blood run cold. Flashing red and blue lights. 3 police cruisers and a black SUV with federal plates were waiting on the tarmac. The Gulf Stream came to a halt. The engines whined down, the high-pitched scream fading into a low, dying moan. Inside the cabin, the silence was deafening. "Stay seated." Captain O'Malley's voice came over the intercom. "Authorities are boarding the aircraft." Porter jumped up from the divan. "Authorities?" "For what? Because I was rude. That's not a crime." He rushed toward the front of the plane. "Catherine, grab the dog. We're leaving. I'll handle the cops. I know the chief of police in Jersey." He tried to push past the galley, but Captain O'Malley was already standing there, blocking the main door. O'Malley was a big man, and he stood with his arms crossed. "Step back, Mr. Walsh," O'Malley warned. The cabin door hissed and rotated open. The cold, damp air of New Jersey flooded in. 2 officers from the Port Authority Police Department stepped onto the stairs. Behind them was a man in a suit, FBI. "Which one is Porter Walsh?" the FBI agent asked. He didn't look happy. Nobody likes being called out to a remote tarmac in the rain. "That would be him," Jocelyn said from seat 1A. She hadn't moved. She hadn't even unbuckled. She simply pointed a finger toward the sweating man in the navy suit. "Mr. Walsh," the agent said, stepping into the cabin. "I'm Agent Miller. Please step forward and place your hands where I can see them." "This is ridiculous," Porter shouted, though he complied, holding his hands up. "She hijacked the plane. She kidnapped me. I want to press charges against her." Agent Miller ignored him. "Mr. Walsh, we have a report from the captain of interference with a flight crew intimidation of passengers and destruction of personal property aboard an aircraft. Under 49 U.S. Code, interference with flight crew members and attendants is a federal offense. Interference, I just wanted a drink, I just wanted my seat," Porter spluttered. He looked at Jocelyn. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." Jocelyn slowly swiveled her chair around. She looked at Porter with a gaze that was terrifyingly neutral. "You kicked my bag," Jocelyn said. "You threatened the crew, and you refused to follow the captain's orders to sit down during a dispute. In the air, Porter, that's not being a jerk. That's a felony." The officers moved in. They didn't use the gentle handcuffs. They spun Porter around, forcing his chest against the galley counter. The metallic click-click of the cuffs echoed through the luxury cabin. "You can't arrest me," Porter screamed as they hauled him toward the door. "I'm a managing director. I make more in a week than you make in a year. Catherine, call the lawyer." "Catherine?" Porter looked back at his wife. Catherine was standing in the aisle. She was holding the dog carrier. She looked at her husband, handcuffed and red-faced, being dragged down the stairs of a private jet he didn't own. "Catherine," Porter pleaded. "Come with me." Catherine looked at the FBI agent. "Officer." "Yes, ma'am." "Am I under arrest?" "No, ma'am. The captain's report specifies that Mr. Walsh was the sole aggressor. You are free to go." Catherine nodded. She looked at Porter. "I'm not coming, Porter," she said quietly. What? Porter's eyes bulged. "I'm going to my mother's in Connecticut," she said. "I'm taking the car. You can call your lawyer yourself. I'm done." "Catherine." The police dragged him down the stairs. He was shouting obscenities into the rainy night, his $5,000 suit getting soaked. They shoved him into the back of a squad car. Jocelyn watched from the window. She took a sip of her water. "Is he gone?" she asked. "He is off the aircraft, Miss Banks," Captain O'Malley said, closing the door and locking it. "And his luggage has been offloaded onto the tarmac." "Good," Jocelyn said. She looked at Catherine, who was standing awkwardly in the middle of the cabin, trembling. "I'm so sorry," Catherine said, tears finally spilling over. "I'm so sorry, Miss Banks. I should have said something. I'm so afraid of him." Jocelyn's expression softened. She wasn't a monster. She unbuckled and stood up, walking over to Catherine. "It's not your fault he's a narcissist," Jocelyn said gently. "Do you have a ride to Connecticut?" I can call an Uber. I don't want to be a bother." Jocelyn shook her head. "Kevin, my driver, is outside. He was waiting for me, but I'm going back to San Francisco. Kevin will take you to Connecticut." "On me?" You'd do that after what he did." "He did it. You didn't," Jocelyn said. "Go, start your life over. You look like you need it." Catherine sobbed a mix of relief and grief. She thanked Jocelyn profusely and hurried down the stairs to the waiting black SUV. The cabin was finally quiet. It was just Jocelyn and Lydia. "Lydia," Jocelyn said, sitting back down in 1A. "Yes, Miss Banks. We missed our slot, didn't we?" "Yes, ma'am. Air traffic control says we have a 2-hour hold before we can depart again for SFO." Jocelyn sighed. She looked at the empty seat where Porter had sat. "That's fine," Jocelyn said. "Get the cleaning crew on board. I want this cabin scrubbed. I don't want to smell his cologne when we take off." "Yes, ma'am." "And Lydia." "Yes. Open the Glenfiddich again. I think I finally earned that drink." While the jet sat on the runway, waiting for a new clearance, Jocelyn pulled out her phone. The Wi-Fi was back on. She opened her email. She composed a message. To Board of Directors, Helios Capital. Subject formal complaint regarding Porter Walsh. Termination of contract. She began to type. She didn't just want him off her plane. She wanted him out of her industry. But as she typed, she realized something. The story wasn't over. Porter Walsh was the kind of man who didn't go down without burning the world around him. He wasn't just going to sit in a cell. He was going to fight. And Jocelyn Banks was ready for war. Down at the precinct, Porter was using his one phone call. He wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling a tabloid journalist. "I have a story," Porter hissed into the receiver, shivering in his wetsuit. "About Jocelyn Banks, about Meridian Dynamics. She was drunk. She was abusive. She hijacked a plane. I want to ruin her." The war had just begun. The morning sun over San Francisco Bay was blinding. But inside the boardroom of Meridian Dynamics, the mood was pitch black. Jocelyn Banks sat at the head of a 20-foot polished oak table. She hadn't slept. She had showered, changed into a crisp white power suit, and drank 3 espressos. But the fatigue was vibrating behind her eyes. On the wall-sized screen at the end of the room, a headline from the Daily Chronicle, a tabloid with more reach than integrity, screamed in bold sans-serif font. "Mile High Madness Tech CEO hijacks own plane, kidnaps Wall Street exec in drunken rage." Below the headline was a blurry photo of Jocelyn from a charity gala 3 years ago, chosen specifically because she looked sweaty and intense. Next to it was a photo of Porter Walsh, looking clean-cut professional and aggrieved. "It's trending," said Marcus Jocelyn's VP of Public Relations. He looked like he was about to be sick. "It's #1 on X. It's on TikTok. The narrative is, bad Jocelyn. He got to the press first." Jocelyn stared at the screen. Porter had been busy. After being released on bail at 2:00 a.m., charges of interference were pending. But he had a good lawyer. He had gone straight to a reporter named Barry Holt. Holt was known for takedown pieces on successful women. The article was a masterclass in fiction. According to Mr. Walsh, a respected managing director at Helios Capital, the flight began normally until Ms. Banks, allegedly intoxicated on vintage scotch, became belligerent. She demanded I move to the back, simply because she wanted to stretch out, Walsh told the Chronicle. When I refused, she became abusive. She used her wealth as a weapon. She forced the pilot to turn around, effectively kidnapping me and my wife. It was a nightmare. I thought we were going to crash. He left out the part where he kicked my bag, Jocelyn said dryly, and the part where he called me sweetheart and told me to sit in the back. The truth doesn't matter right now, Marcus said, tapping his tablet. The stock is down 4% in pre-market trading. The board is freaking out. They're calling for an emergency ethics review. Jocelyn, they're saying you were drunk on a corporate asset. That's a violation of the bylaws. Jocelyn spun her chair around to face the window. She watched the fog roll over the Golden Gate Bridge. She knew what Porter was doing. It was the Darvo tactic, deny attack and reverse victim and offender. He knew he was in legal trouble for the interference charge, so he was trying to destroy her credibility, so the jury would see him as a victim of a tyrannical billionaire. He wants a settlement, Jocelyn murmured. He wants me to write him a check to make this go away. And maybe we should, Marcus suggested weakly. A quiet statement, a donation to a charity of his, choice a non-disclosure agreement. We stop the bleeding. Jocelyn turned back to the table. Her eyes were hard. Marcus, she said, do you know why I named this company Meridian? No, ma'am. Because the meridian is the line that divides the day from the night. It is the definitive line, and he just crossed it. She stood up. Issue a statement. A short one. Say that Meridian Dynamics denies all allegations and that we have full faith in the legal process. That's it. No apologies. No explanations. That's it, Marcus asked, stunned. He's destroying your reputation. Let him talk, Jocelyn said, picking up her phone. Let him go on every talk show. Let him file his lawsuit. Let him swear under oath that his version of events is the truth. Why? Because Jocelyn smiled a cold, dangerous expression that didn't reach her eyes. The G650ER is equipped with a cabin management system. It records audio and video of the main cabin for liability purposes during charter operations. Porter thinks it was just my word against his. Marcus's jaw dropped. You have a tape. I have a tape, Jocelyn confirmed. But we aren't releasing it yet. Why not? We could end this today. No, Jocelyn said, walking toward the door. If I release it now, he just looks like a jerk. I want him to commit perjury. I want him to file a false police report. I want him to sue me for $50 million based on a lie. I want him to dig the hole so deep that when I finally kick the ladder away, he never climbs out. She opened the door. Get the legal team ready, Marcus. We're going to let him think he's winning. 1 week later, the trap was baited and Porter Walsh had swallowed it whole. Emboldened by Jocelyn's silence, Porter had gone on a media blitz. He appeared on morning talk shows looking somber and traumatized. He gave interviews to business journals, painting himself as the champion of the common executive, standing up to the woke, out-of-control elite. He had filed a civil lawsuit against Jocelyn Banks and Meridian Dynamics for $75 million, citing defamation, false imprisonment, emotional distress, and loss of future earnings. The loss of future earnings claim was the pivot point. Porter claimed that because Jocelyn had diverted the plane, he missed a critical meeting with the Silicon Valley Venture Group, costing him a potential $10 million bonus. Now it was time for the deposition. The setting was a conference room in a high-rise in downtown Manhattan. On one side sat Porter Walsh, looking smug in a new suit, flanked by a team of aggressive lawyers. On the other side sat Jocelyn Banks. She was alone, save for her general counsel, a quiet man named Roger. There were no cameras here. just a court reporter typing every word. "Mr. Walsh." Roger began adjusting his glasses. "You claim that Ms. Banks was the aggressor on the flight, that she was intoxicated and unreasonable." "That is correct," Porter said, leaning into the microphone. "She was out of control. I was simply trying to work." "And you claim," Roger continued, flipping through a binder, "that you never used derogatory language, you never touched her property, you never refused a direct order from the captain." "Absolutely not," Porter lied smoothly. "I am a professional. I respect authority. I was the one trying to de-escalate the situation." Jocelyn sat perfectly still. She was sketching on a notepad. She didn't look at him. "And finally," Roger said, "you are claiming $75 million in damages because you missed a meeting with the Silicon Valley Venture Group. Is that right?" "Yes," Porter said, his voice rising with indignation. "That was the deal of a lifetime. I had the portfolio ready. They were ready to sign. Because of Ms. Banks' tantrum, I missed the window. They pulled the offer." Roger looked at Jocelyn. Jocelyn stopped sketching. She closed her notepad. She looked at Porter. "Mr. Walsh," Jocelyn said, her voice soft. "Do you know who owns the Silicon Valley Venture Group?" Porter scoffed. "Some consortium of investors. What does it matter?" "It matters," Jocelyn said, "because SVVG is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meridian Dynamics." The room went silent. The court reporter's typing stopped for a fraction of a second. Porter blinked. "What? I bought them 6 months ago," Jocelyn said. "It's a shell company I use for acquiring logistics startups without inflating the market price." She leaned forward. "So the meeting you were flying to? The people you were going to pitch to? They work for me. You were coming to ask me for money, Porter. You just didn't know it was me." Porter's face went pale. His lawyers began to shuffle papers nervously. "And here's the best part," Jocelyn continued, sliding a single piece of paper across the table. "I had my team pull the logs. There was no meeting scheduled with you. SVVG passed on your portfolio 3 days before the flight. You were flying to San Francisco to beg for a reconsideration that wasn't going to happen." That's a lie," Porter stammered. "I had an appointment." "No, you didn't," Jocelyn said. "So your claim for lost earnings is fraud, but that's the least of your problems." Roger reached into his briefcase and pulled out a laptop. He placed it on the table and turned the screen toward Porter. "Exhibit B," Roger said, "the cabin recording from the Osprey." Porter froze. He looked like a deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. You recorded it." "Video and audio," Jocelyn said. 4K resolution. Crystal clear audio." She pressed the spacebar. The video played. The screen showed the cabin. It showed Porter storming in. It captured the audio perfectly. "Look, sweetheart, move to the back where you belong." It showed him kicking the Hermes bag. It showed him screaming at Lydia. It showed Jocelyn sitting calmly asking him to stop. It showed the captain ordering him to sit down and Porter screaming, "I'm Porter Walsh. I always win." The video ended. The silence in the conference room was heavy enough to crush bone. Porter's lead lawyer closed his folder. He looked at Porter with pure disgust. He knew he had just been led into a perjury trap. "We're done here," the lawyer said, standing up. "I cannot represent a client who lies to me about material evidence." "Sit down," Porter hissed at his lawyer. Then he looked at Jocelyn. "You can't release that. It's an invasion of privacy." "Actually," Jocelyn said, standing up and smoothing her suit jacket, "the charter contract you signed, Section 14, Paragraph C, passenger consents to video monitoring for safety and liability purposes. You signed it, Porter. You signed away your privacy to get on my jet." She walked to the door. "I'm countersuing Porter. For the fuel costs, for the legal fees, for defamation, and I'm sending this video to the district attorney to add a perjury charge to your interference charge." She paused her hand on the doorknob. "Oh, and I'm releasing the video to the Daily Chronicle in 10 minutes. I think the headline will be, 'The Real Story at 40,000 Feet.'" Porter Walsh slumped in his chair. He looked small. He looked broke. "Why?" he whispered. "Why go this far?" Jocelyn looked back at him, her expression serene. "Because you didn't just take a seat, Porter. You tried to take my dignity. And unlike the seat that is not for sale." She walked out. As the heavy door clicked shut, Porter Walsh realized his life as he knew it was over. But the hard karma wasn't finished yet. The video was about to hit the internet, and the internet is not known for its forgiveness. The video file was titled Incident-OKTB Cabin Cam Dozo Fort MP4. Jocelyn didn't upload it herself. She sent it to Marcus, her VP of PR, with a simple instruction: correct the record. Marcus uploaded it to Meridian Dynamics' official press page and X, formerly Twitter account, at 2:05 p.m. By 2:15 p.m., the internet had stopped rotating. The contrast was too perfect, too visceral for the public to ignore. On one side, they had weeks of Porter Walsh giving interviews, crocodile tears glistening as he described being bullied by a woke mob. On the other side was the cold, hard 4K digital truth. The video didn't just go viral, it became a cultural artifact. Viewers watched Porter sneer. They heard the sweetheart comment. They heard the distinct, sickening thud of the Hermes bag hitting the bathroom door. They saw Jocelyn's terrifying calm. They saw the captain's stoic professionalism. And they saw Porter's lie unravel in real time. The fallout hour won. Porter was sitting in a luxury lunch spot in Tribeca, celebrating what he thought was a successful deposition. He was checking his phone, expecting an email from his lawyers about a settlement offer from Jocelyn. Instead, he saw his name trending. Porter Walsh Ezelia, Yachash Seat Snatcher, Maidstow's Sweetheart Gate. He clicked the first link. The blood drained from his face so fast he nearly fainted. He watched himself on the screen, ugly drunk entitled. He looked up and realized the restaurant had gone quiet. People were looking at their phones, then looking at him. The waiter came over. He didn't offer a dessert menu. "Sir, the manager has asked that you settle your bill and leave, now." The fallout hour 24. Helios Capital didn't wait for a board meeting. The video was a PR nuclear bomb. They issued a tweet. "Effective immediately, Porter Walsh has been terminated for cause. His behavior does not reflect our values. We apologize to Ms. Banks and the crew of the Osprey." Porter's access card didn't work when he tried to enter the building to get his things. Security met him at the revolving door with a cardboard box containing a stapler and a photo frame. They didn't let him inside. The legal hammer. The civil suit for $75 million was dismissed with prejudice the next morning. But the real pain came from the Department of Justice. The FBI agent, Agent Miller, had seen the video too. The discrepancy between Porter's sworn police statement, "she was the aggressor," and the video evidence constituted a federal felony making false statements to a federal agent 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 1001, in addition to the interference with flight crew members charge. Porter was arrested again. This time there was no bail. The judge, having seen the video and the attempt to frame an innocent woman, deemed him a flight risk and a danger to the community's trust in the justice system. The personal ruin. 3 weeks later, Catherine visited him in the detention center. She sat behind the glass partition. She looked different. She had cut her hair. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked free. "I filed the papers, Porter," she said, her voice echoing through the phone receiver. "Catherine, baby, don't do this," Porter pleaded, looking gaunt in his orange jumpsuit. "It's just a rough patch. I'll bounce back. I always do." "You're not bouncing back from this," she said sadly. "I saw the video, Porter. I was there but watching it, seeing how you looked at her." "It's how you look at me when you're angry. I'm done being afraid." "What about the house? The Hamptons place?" "The lawyers say they'll likely be seized to pay the legal fees and the countersuit damages to Ms. Banks," Catherine said. "I'm taking the dog. Goodbye, Porter." She hung up the phone and walked out, leaving him screaming silently behind the glass. 1 year later, Jocelyn Banks sat in the back of the Osprey. It was a sunny Tuesday. She was flying to London for a keynote speech on integrity in leadership. "Smooth air today, Ms. Banks," Captain O'Malley said over the intercom. "Thanks, O'Malley," Jocelyn replied. She looked out the window at the clouds. She thought about Porter Walsh. He had been sentenced to 24 months in a federal correctional facility, followed by 3 years of probation. He was bankrupt. His reputation was so toxic that even the lowest-tier consulting firms wouldn't touch him. The last she heard, he was working at a car wash in New Jersey, trying to pay off his debts. He had tried to reach out once, sending a letter from prison. It was a 4-page apology, begging for forgiveness, asking if she could put in a good word to help him get a reduced sentence. Jocelyn hadn't replied. She had shredded the letter not out of malice, but out of a refusal to give him any more of her energy. She looked at seat 1A. It was empty today. She picked up her bag, the battered Hermes HIAC 40. She ran her hand over the scuff mark that Porter's shoe had left. She could have had it repaired. She could have bought 10 new ones. But she kept it. It was a reminder. A reminder that dignity isn't about the cost of your suit or the volume of your voice. It's about knowing who you are when the world tries to move you. Lydia walked by with a crystal tumbler. "Glenfiddich 30, Ms. Banks." Jocelyn smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes. "Yes, please, Lydia, and pour one for yourself when we land. Cheers to that, Mum." The jet banked right, catching the sunlight soaring higher into the stratosphere, leaving the turbulence and the noise far, far below. Porter Walsh thought he was fighting for a seat. He didn't realize he was fighting for his life against a woman who held all the cards. He mistook silence for weakness and a hoodie for poverty. It cost him his marriage, his millions, and his freedom. In the end, Jocelyn Banks didn't need to scream to be heard. She just let the truth do the talking. The most expensive thing Porter Walsh ever bought wasn't a first-class ticket. It was the lesson that you never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book owns the library. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying karma, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if someone stole your seat? I'll see you in the next video.